In the summer of 1979, during a performance, Neil Diamond collapsed right on stage. Not because he had been drinking, not because of some scandal, but because of a tumor pressed close to his spine, a tumor that could have stolen his voice, his career, even his ability to stand. The lights stayed on. The audience didn't understand what was happening. But for Neil, that moment brought a brutal clarity. Talent does not grant immunity from collapse. He was the man who wrote songs that made millions of Americans hold hands and sing in joy. Sweet Caroline echoed through stadiums, bars, weddings, a melody that made people feel united. Yet behind those choruses was a man who often left the stage in silence, carrying exhaustion, loneliness, and fragments of a life quietly breaking apart. Things the audience never saw. Neil Diamond's life was built from contradictions, a musical genius who doubted himself, a symbol of mass joy who repeatedly lost his family, a man who made hundreds of millions from music but more than once had no idea what to cling to when the lights went out. Success arrived early and in force, and the cost came in equal measure. Marriages collapsed. Nights drained him completely. Moments came when his body simply betrayed his will. And decades later, when Parkinson's forced him away from the stage, the question was no longer how talented Neil Diamond truly was, it became, how much pain does a human being endure to become the beautiful memory of a nation? The confrontation with his own physical limits often pulled him back to the beginning. Before Sweet Caroline, before a nation sang along to melodies so familiar they felt eternal, Neil was a boy in small Brooklyn apartments, living so close to neighbors that a sigh could be heard through walls. Born January 24, 1941, into a disciplined and frugal Jewish immigrant family, Neil's childhood left little room for dreaming. His father went off to serve in World War II, leaving a long silence at home. His mother carried the family alone, quiet and uncomplaining. For a few years, Neil lived in Wyoming, a vast landscape that only amplified his loneliness. In that emptiness, he learned to listen to the world in silence. Returning to Brooklyn, he grew more withdrawn, a boy on the edge of conversations. Theaters and movie melodies became his refuge, spaces where emotions could exist without explanation. When he first held a guitar as a teenager, it was never a toy. Playing alone became a way to hold himself together. Each chord was a private space no one else could enter. At Erasmus Hall, surrounded by peers also searching for escape, Neil realized music might be the path that endured. Not fame, not wealth, but a way to survive a life dictated by forces beyond his control. This idea followed him into university, where he enrolled in NYU as a pre-med student, even winning a fencing scholarship. Signs of a conventional life were there, but lecture halls and textbooks did not speak to him. The real rhythm was inside his own mind. Outside class, he carried his guitar to Tin Pan Alley, playing in cramped rooms for indifferent ears. Doors closed silently, one after another, yet he did not stop, not out of hope, but because he had nothing else left to keep him upright. By 1960, Neil made a shocking choice. He left NYU, just 10 credits short of graduation. Music became the only path. He began writing for Sunbeam Music Publishing, earning $50 a week, creating constantly in a small office with an old piano. Some songs were rejected for being too sad or too different. Neil's honesty collided with an industry addicted to formulas. When Sunbeam ended his contract, he entered an invisible period, young, poor, unknown. At times, he survived on mere dimes, sleeping in spaces above jazz clubs. The city was full of music, yet none was meant for him, yet he persisted. In 1962, Clown Town disappeared quietly. By 1965, Bang Records took a gamble, signing him. A year later, his debut album, The Feel of Neil, established him. Then came I'm a Believer, recorded by the Monkees, exploding worldwide and launching him into the top tier of songwriters. Early success brought expectations to repeat formulas. When the market's demands clashed with his voice, he left Bang for Uni Records in 1967. From there, everything accelerated. Brother Love's Traveling Salvation Show, Cracklin' Rosie in 1970, I Am. I Said in 1971, his first Grammy nomination. A voice not easily replaced had arrived. Yet the louder the crowd sang, the more alone Neil became. His first explosion of fame wasn't even his own voice. In 1966, I'm a Believer, performed by the Monkees, became a phenomenon, but Neil watched the song's success from the shadows. He realized that writing only for others meant remaining invisible. So he wrote for himself. Solitary Man was a confession of loneliness, a glimpse into a life on the margins. It laid the foundation for Neil Diamond, an artist capable of turning private pain into collective recognition. 1969 brought Sweet Caroline. The song demanded to be sung with, pulling crowds into one voice. And yet Neil often left the stage in silence, creating belonging for the world while standing outside it. By the 1970s, Neil became a hit-making machine. The Greek Theatre in Los Angeles, 1972, 10 sold-out nights recorded as Hot August Night, sold millions and remained on Australian charts for nearly 2 years. Behind the public fireworks, Neil felt a private burn. Sweat drained, throat raw, silence returned. Fame expanded, Broadway called, Columbia Records offered millions. But higher climbs demanded more sacrifice. He rehearsed, revised, recorded, perfected, until he sometimes no longer recognized himself beyond the role of work. Hollywood brought Jonathan Livingston Seagull, 1973, and The Jazz Singer, 1980. The films faltered, but the music endured, Grammy-winning, yet the cost was relentless touring, feverish nights, and bodily pain ignored until it no longer could be. In 1979, during a performance, the tumor near his spine surfaced, threatening his very voice. He wrote letters to his children, unsure if he would return the same. He survived and returned to the stage, but the emptiness behind the curtain was a constant companion. Neil's personal life mirrored this paradox. His first marriage to Jay Posner in 1963 was modest, grounded, and loving. 2 daughters followed, and for a time, family life functioned. But as his career soared, absence became a habit. Divorce came quietly in 1969. Marcia Murphy entered soon after, not as a conquest but as a steady presence. They married, had 2 sons, Jesse and Micah, and for a time, the family regained rhythm. But touring, recording, and relentless schedules slowly eroded it. By 1995, after 26 years, Neil and Marcia divorced, $150 million later, leaving a deeper wound than public perception could ever grasp. Neil found solace later in Ray Farley, met in Australia. Calm, unflustered, she remained beside him during the quiet and the trials of life, including her own long recovery from surgery. Love became endurance, not spectacle. By 2007, Katie McNeil entered his life. Nearly 30 years younger, she first worked with him professionally, later forming a quiet, steady companionship that grew into marriage in 2012. This time, love demanded nothing beyond presence, proving that home is not a place, it is a person. Even as love stabilized, Neil's body did not relent. The tremors began almost imperceptibly, fingers faltering, then worse. Parkinson's entered like a thief, stripping rhythm, balance, and control. For a performer, it was brutal, invisible, and isolating. Eventually, Neil stepped away from touring, not for lack of love for music, but to preserve it from fracture. Today, at 84, in Colorado, Neil lives quietly among snow, pine, and mountains. Music remains his anchor. The piano sits ready, keys worn from decades. Katie is beside him, calm and unwavering. No more schedules, no more glory demanded. Just mornings, music, and presence. Sweet Caroline still fills stadiums, yet for Neil, the performance is now private, gentle, and real. His legacy transcends wealth, estimated at $300 million, and fame. It exists in the collective memory of a nation, in the first note that transforms strangers into a unified chorus. Induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 2011, and the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, 2018, merely formalized what had already endured, a life of songs that healed, comforted, and gave belonging. Neil wrote music not to impress, but to rescue from loneliness, creating spaces where everyone could feel at home. Even now, Neil Diamond's life reads like a ballad in its closing verse, measured, reflective, and profoundly human. Parkinson's may take control, may rob the stage, but it cannot erase what has been planted in memory. He no longer performs, yet his music persists, immortal in a way that even time cannot touch. Neil Diamond's final triumph is peace, love, music, memory, and quiet mornings that carry the resonance of a life lived fully, painfully, and beautifully.